Adult baby's lifetime diaper change. Hi everyone, my name is Robbie. My current babysitter calls me Baby Snookums. I do have a very remarkable tale to tell you. This is how I managed to get into this predicament. It began my first year of college. I had just enrolled in my last class so I could begin studying for my degree in marine biology. At the registration, there was this extremely cute and adorable girl signing up for the same class. She had on a very short soft pink sundress, with cute little puffy sleeves. I could just make out every now and then a hint of ruffles on her panties, when she would bend over to sign the rosters. She had long white blonde hair down past her shoulders tied in ponytails. And what looked like very comfortable slippers on her feet. I had to meet this girl. She was just too cute. I walked over to her and introduced myself. Hello, my name is Robbie. Seems we are sharing the same class this semester. Do you need some help? She looks at me with her wonderful green eyes and giggles sweetly. She says in a soft voice, my name is Tracy and I am a bit confused. I could use some help. I was more than willing to help. As the day progressed, Tracy had started to hold my hand. She was always cheerful and had the sweetest giggle I had ever heard. We talked about almost everything I could possibly think of just so I could hear her sweet voice. It was almost time to go for the day. I couldn't just let this girl walk away. The next day was Saturday and I thought I could at least spend Friday and Saturday with her. I say, could you give me your number? I would like to call you tomorrow and see if you might like to go somewhere with me. She smiles a beautiful smile and writes something on a piece of paper. She says softly, I need you to give this to your mother. My mother? I respond in a slightly surprised voice. She says, yes, your mother. You said you live with her, right? I reply, yeah. She says sweetly, well, give it to her. My mommy will want to talk to her before you come over tomorrow. And no peeking either or it's off. I quickly reply, okay. I'll give it to my mom and won't peek. She giggles sweetly and gives me a soft kiss on my cheek. I am totally in heaven. She says in a cooing voice, I'll see you tomorrow, baby. Have a good night. I watch in stunned silence as Tracy gracefully walks off. I can still smell her perfume. I inhale deeply. So sweet and fresh. Reminds me of baby powder. I'm very surprised. I stand for a minute as her baby powder scent slowly fades and the crass smells of the room settle back in. I am definitely going to give this to Mom and do everything I can to be at her house tomorrow. When I get home, Mom is in the kitchen making dinner. I toss my book bag on the floor by the sofa and walk in. I say, hi, Mom. How's your day been? I get a glass of milk from the fridge and grab several oatmeal cookies. She replies, was a long day at work. I'm glad the day is over and I don't have to go back till Wednesday. Don't eat too many of those cookies. They'll spoil dinner. I reply, they won't, I'm starving. I look at the note in my hand. I want to see Tracy tomorrow. I continue, I met a very cute girl today at registration. Mom says cheerily, that's nice dear, when am I going to meet her? I hand the note to her and reply, well, her name's Tracy and she said to give this note to you or I won't get to see her tomorrow. Mom takes the note with raised eyebrows. She opens it and reads it. A huge smile crosses her lips. She looks at me with a sparkle in her eye and says softly, I know Amanda, Tracy's mom. We work together at the lab. You really want to go spend Saturday and Sunday with Tracy? I agree, she is the cutest girl I have met, and I have no objections. 2 days. Oh man, there is no way I'm going to turn this down. I reply quickly. Are you kidding, Mom? I would love nothing better. Mom laughs softly and picks up the phone. I hear her talking to Amanda. They do know each other and make arrangements quickly. I hear Mom say, and he will always be that adorable. Just like Tracy? I'm all for it. I'll drop him off at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Okay. Yes. For as long as they like. Yes, do that. Bye. Mom hangs up the phone and writes down a phone number on a separate piece of paper. She gives me the paper and says, "That's Tracy's number. Don't lose it. You're the only one who has ever had her number. I will drive you over and drop you off." I say in a loud voice. "What? Mom, I'm old enough to drive myself." She replies in the voice of Mom. "Either I take you and pick you up, or you can't go. That's the way of it." I agree quickly. There's no way I'm going to miss out on this date. I hurry through dinner and help to clean the table. Mom pats me on my butt as I go upstairs to bed. This is something I don't remember Mom ever doing. But I sorta like it as long as she doesn't do it in front of other people. I was so excited I almost couldn't get to sleep. When sleep finally did come, I dreamed of Tracy in the sweetest way all night. I wake to Mom shaking me softly and telling me it's time to get up. I have an hour to get ready and have breakfast. Mom has laid out shorts and a t-shirt along with the pair of underwear I hate. They look like a girl's panties. Mom isn't taking any nonsense this morning. So I take my bath and dress quickly without any discussion. I hurry through breakfast and find Mom has already gotten the car out and is waiting for me. I get in the car. I am off on the beginning of a day that will change my life forever. Mom drops me off at Tracy's house and drives off, leaving me there. I watch for a bit as the car disappears off in the distance. Tracy's house is huge. I walk up the drive to the front door. I ring the doorbell. I can hear the Westminster chimes sound sweetly inside. I notice the gate closes across the driveway. I take note. But it doesn't matter. The door opens and a very beautiful older woman answers. She is dressed in a maid's outfit. At least I thought it was. She clasps her hands together and smiles radiantly. She says in a cooing voice like she was talking to a baby, "You must be Robbie. You are so adorable already. Do come in, come in. Trace is waiting for you in the playroom." She takes me softly by the hand and leads me in the door. It closes and I could swear I heard it bolt lock. She leads me through an archway and down a hall. At the end of the hall, she takes me into a room and the door shuts. I am astounded. I am in a baby's nursery. I see Tracy in a diaper and a pair of white romper panties with baby Tweety and friends on them. She has no other clothes on and is sucking on a bottle of red liquid. I realize suddenly she's in a nursery. In a playpen. Dressed in baby clothes. And sucking on a bottle. I turn just as Amanda gently holds me. I feel so strange suddenly. I feel goose flesh rise all over me and a tingling rush runs through me. There is some kind of device on her hand. I have never seen anything like it before. She says cooingly like she's talking to a baby. "Is baby all wet and need a fresh diaper?" I suddenly feel a warmth spread in the front of my pants and run down my leg. I can't believe it. I just pissed my pants. Amanda then takes one of my butt cheeks in her hand and says in the same voice, "Did baby make a stinky too?" Again I can't help myself. I feel something filling my pants in the back. I can smell it and know I have just messed in my pants too. I can't even begin to comprehend what's happening. Amanda takes my face gently in both of her hands and caresses it softly. I see she has one of those devices on both hands. I suddenly feel so weird in my head. I am having a hard time thinking. I get the strangest desire to play with the baby toys I see in the playpen. I hear Trace's sweet little giggle. Amanda says in that voice, "It's okay, baby Snookums. Babies have accidents if they are not in their diapers. Come, Auntie will clean you up and diaper you properly." I can't quite understand. I'm not a baby. I can't help myself for some reason. My thoughts are not right. This is Tracy's mom. I suddenly know she's auntie too. Amanda takes me by the hand and leads me into another room. This is a bathroom with a table and many shelves filled with oils, powders, creams, and a large stack of cloth diapers. Amanda says in that voice, "Okay baby, lift your arms so I can take off your wet shirt." Without thinking, I raise my arms and the wet shirt is over my head and gone. There is a moment of confusion as Amanda unbuckles my pants. She has a large wipe of some kind and begins to clean around me. As she removes my wet and soiled pants and undies, she says in her voice, "Okay sweetie. Step out of those dirty clothes. You won't be needing them ever again." I can't help it. I step out of my soiled and wet pants and stand in front of Tracy's mom. I try to cover myself shyly. She takes several sweet-smelling baby wipes and cleans me, moving my hands out of the way. She rubs her nose to mine and kisses it softly and says, "That's a good baby. You are such a good baby." I feel her caress my face again and down the back of my neck. It was so wonderfully electric. I realize I don't have a care in this world at this moment. I vaguely wonder about her calling me baby though. It feels so right. Isn't there something wrong? I feel her hands gently caress my face and neck again. I can't remember what I was thinking. I realize I am being lifted in the air. I am confused. Tracy's mom must be tremendously strong. I feel the table on my back as I am gently laid on it. She blows in my belly button. I screech and kick my feet. I am totally unable to help myself as I giggle like any baby boy. Amanda coos to me. It makes me very happy. I am lifted by my ankles and then set back on a very thick, soft, and extremely warm diaper. She spreads my legs and takes a bottle of baby oil off of a shelf. She opens it. I can smell the wonderful smell of honeysuckle. I hear Amanda say in her cooing voice, "This is very special baby oil, sweetie. I and your mother invented it several years ago to keep Tracy out of trouble. It will make you such an adorable baby boyfriend for Tracy." Your mom agreed with me totally on that point. It is not reversible either. I know you will enjoy this. I feel her hands caress me so softly as she applies the oil. She massages me all over in a thick coating of baby oil. I'm losing whatever worry I had in my mind and I'm really enjoying what's happening. She powders me very generously, then pulls the diaper up between my legs and pins it snugly on. It is so soft and warm. I can feel myself getting aroused. I can't help this either. It feels so good. I am tickled in my ribs. I am very ticklish and squeal and squirm. I am giggling so hard and am really enjoying Auntie. She takes my big toe. She kisses me on my toes. She says cooingly, "This little piggy went to market." No. I can't handle the intense tickle. I am screeching with peals of baby laughter and squirming for all I'm worth. This little piggy stayed home. I am having the time of my life. This little piggy had roast beef. I am doing my best to get my toes from her hands and away from the tickling kisses. I am helpless to stop her. Oh, this little piggy had none. She blows in my belly button again. I am in another world beyond heaven. And this little piggy. She tickles my feet. Goes wee, all the way home. She blows in my belly button one more time and stands me on my feet. I am dizzy in the head and deliriously happy. I see her hold out a pair of rumba panties. They have teddy bears on them and a plastic lining. She says, "Step in, baby." I can't help myself. It is another wonderful feeling as she pulls them up over my diaper. I am confused. I feel something is wrong, but I don't know what it might be. I am suddenly picked up again and laid across Amanda's chest as she carries me into the playroom. I realize suddenly I am being put in the same playpen as Tracy. Auntie kisses me sweetly and then Tracy. She says cooingly, "Here's your new boyfriend. This time you can keep him. His mummy said she found his secret stash of diapers and is all for this." Tracy claps and giggles sweetly. She hugs me around my neck and kisses me on my lips. I can't help myself. I kiss her back. Something in me suddenly changes. I know I am a baby for the rest of my life. Tracy says sweetly in a baby's voice, "We come to Ms. Pwapen. Us CN does anything we wants. Wis babies for the residential of our LIF." No. I don't. I don't want to grow up. I am kissed and so is Tracy. Auntie says cooingly, "Okay babies, play nice while I go and fix your bottle for lunch." We say in unison, "Ote, was be good babies." Auntie smiles and leaves. The door to the nursery closes softly. I look around. This is my new life and I love it. Especially since I have Tracy all to myself. Petty-coated predicament. 1. Not misbehaving much. I had never thought of myself as being a particularly naughty child, just perhaps a little prone to becoming bored, especially during school holidays. So back in July 1959 at the age of 13, it didn't seem all that terrible a crime to climb over the backyard fence, late one Wednesday morning, and sneak up on the tent in which those two awfully soppy girls Cynthia and Brenda, who lived next door, were playing inside. It also didn't seem so naughty for me to accidentally pull out the tent pegs that held it up, leading to it suddenly collapsing on top of them, with lots of girlish screams resulting. Of course, by that time I was well out of the way, having climbed quickly back over the fence before I could be recognized as the perpetrator of the tent collapse. Or so I thought, because when I reckoned the coast was clear about an hour later for my lunch, I found my mother waiting for me with her arms on her waist, looking decidedly annoyed. "So, Peter, what have you been up to this time?" she said. I tried to look as innocent as I could, but it soon transpired that I had been observed by Mrs. Thompson, the mother of Cynthia and Brenda, sneaking away, after letting down their tent. "I've warned you before about picking on those nice girls next door," said Mother. "This is the last straw, so go up to your room and change into your school uniform right now. I know it's a week before you have to go back to school again for the new term, but I have an errand for you and I want you looking respectable for it. Off you go, you naughty boy." 2. Never trust a vexed mother. Well, I'd been sprung, so there was nothing to do but carry out Mother's orders and change into my school uniform, after a quick wash in the bathroom. When I came down the stairs in my school short trousers, shirt, tie, and blazer, Mother gave me the usual inspection, and then handed me an envelope. "Peter, you are to deliver this right now," she said. It was addressed to Edna Bainbridge, C. Bainbridge Fashions, High Street in the local High Street. I knew Mrs. Bainbridge and my mother were old friends from way back, but it did seem a strange sort of errand for a Wednesday afternoon, seeing as it was half-day closing. "Won't the shop be shut, Mum?" I asked. "Edna and her staff are stock-taking this afternoon, so all you have to do is knock at the side door of the shop and they'll let you in to take this envelope. You'll have to wait there for a reply. Now, on your way, and show me you can at least do one thing right." So off I headed, without even getting a bite to eat for my lunch. I might have been only 13, but I wasn't so stupid as to see when obeying Mother's orders was the most important thing. We only lived about a mile away from the high street, and I knew quite well where Bainbridge's Fashions were, because my mother and elder sister Wendy often visited it. On occasion, I'd even had to go into the shop myself with them, waiting while they looked at this or that silly frock or bought themselves some new underwear or whatever. Luckily, the shop had a sort of outer waiting room, with a pile of comics and magazines to look at while Mum and Wendy were checking out their new frillis or frocks. So the shop wasn't as much of an awesome prospect as it might have been for a 13-year-old schoolboy like me. I reached the Bainbridge Fashions shop just after 1 p.m., seeing as the local town hall clock was striking as I turned the final street corner into the high street. The shop already was shut, but I knew where the side entrance was and knocked loudly on the door. I heard some clicking footsteps and the door opened. It wasn't Mrs. Bainbridge, but one of her sales staff, a really frightening-looking woman called Hilda, according to her name badge. "Ah, you must be Peter, with the envelope for Mrs. Bainbridge," she said, with a strange sort of grin. "Well, come in, lad, don't just stand there." I followed the gruesome Hilda into the shop, and was led through the main sales area with all the silly frocks and other stuff on display, into a side waiting room that I'd never noticed before. "Sit down over there, lad," said Hilda. "Madam Bainbridge will be here shortly to take control." With that, she left, closing the door. There was a sofa to sit on, with a table in front but no comics or anything to read. The only things of interest were some corset and brassiere adverts on the walls. Well, I might have been only 13, but I was already noticing the interesting shapes of young ladies and the ways they achieved such things, courtesy of the magazines that Mum and Sister Wendy used to leave lying around our house. 3. The Devil at 1 o'clock. After about 5 minutes, Hilda returned, with no less than Mrs. Edna Bainbridge herself in tow. The door was ominously shut behind them. "Peter," said Mrs. Bainbridge with a frown, "I've been having some bad reports from your mother that you've been very naughty today. You've apparently been ignoring all the good advice from your mother about how a 13-year-old boy should conduct himself, and disgraced your mother over your bullying behavior with your next-door's neighbor's 2 girls. Is this true, Peter?" Well, what could I say? I could only hang my head and mumble that I was sorry for what I'd done. There was a silence and then Mrs. Bainbridge looked directly at Hilda, ignoring me completely. She just said, "Okay, Hilda, you know what to do. This young lout needs some strict petticoating to mend his ways. Please give him the full treatment as before, with those other naughty boys. I'll be back in 15 minutes to check on progress." She then walked out, with me looking aghast. What was this petticoating and full treatment going to be? 4. Panties and petticoats for Peter. It didn't take long to find out. That awful Hilda was holding a pair of elastic panties, which she handed to me. "Peter, you have 5 minutes to undress and put these panties on by yourself. If you don't, I'll be back with my assistant Gertrude and we'll do it for you. I should tell you right now that Gertrude does not like cheeky boys, and she carries a stick that she'll use on your bottom if you don't cooperate." With that, she turned around and left, closing the door behind her. I just stood there aghast. What could I do? I tried the door, but it was locked. In 5 minutes the terrible Hilda and the even worse Gertrude with her stick would be there, to check on my progress. I might have been only 13, but I wasn't stupid, so I stripped off all my schoolboy clothes and put on the elastic panties. Those panties were tighter than they seemed, and compressed my private parts so closely that I actually looked just like a girl. The effect was surprising. There was a mirror in the corner of the room, so I could see just how I looked, and it really was a shock to see that I suddenly didn't look like a 13-year-old boy at all. Apart from my flat chest, of course, but that was soon to change. The door opened and there were Hilda and Gertrude, carrying several packages. They came in and shut the door behind them. "Turn around, Peter," said Hilda. "Yes, that's a good start, you're looking nice and girly already in your panties. But now we have to get you into your training brassiere, don't we? Put your arms out in front of you, there's a good little sissy boy." 5. Busting out all over. It was so humiliating, but within barely another 5 minutes I'd been fitted with a burly princess training bra, along with some falsies to add additional padding for good measure. Gertrude made sure I knew just what I was being fitted with, whispering in my ear as she adjusted the bra straps, what a cute burly princess I would soon be. Bad as that was, worse was to follow. They made me turn around in front of the mirror now in my training bra and panties, this way and that. I felt so humiliated I wanted to burst out in tears, but I felt that it would just be giving in to them, so I didn't. Maybe I should have, because far worse was to follow. As I turned around, Hilda whispered to Gertrude that my hips and bottom were far too slim still, and needed some additional assistance. They didn't realize that I could make out what they were saying, but I didn't have a clue just what that assistance might be. Within a couple of minutes I found out only too well, when Gertrude reappeared with a package marked Playtex Magic Briefs. The package was handed to me and I was ordered to put them on, over my elastic panties. Those Playtex briefs were padded around the hips and rear, with a constricting waistband. It was so embarrassing to then have to walk around in front of the mirror yet again, while Hilda and Gertrude ummed and ahed, but they did seem quite satisfied that I now looked more appropriately rounded. I took a sly look myself at the mirror and I was amazed. I actually looked like a girl, what with my budding breasts and rounded hips and bigger bottom. 6. Imprisoned in a panty girdle. Bad as that was, things were to get even worse. Hilda said to Gertrude, "I think Peter's ready now for his pantygirdle and stockings, don't you?" I could have died right there and then, because my elder sister Wendy wore a pantygirdle to control her flabby bottom and waist, and I knew it was not a very comfortable thing to wear, because she always complained when she had to wear it for going out. Still, there was nothing I could do, locked up in that room while Gertrude went away to find an appropriate undergarment for me. They even measured my waist and hips, now suitably altered by the addition of the Playtex briefs, of course, so when Gertrude returned with a burly sarongster highline pantygirdle, it was a perfect fit. Well, that's to say a perfect fit after the pair of them tugging and pulling it over my waist and bottom, but finally it was in place. I just had to sneak another look in the mirror, and it was really frightening now, just how feminine my outline looked. My waist was now much thinner, but my hips were wider and of course my bottom was much bigger too, which on top of my boobies, courtesy of my princess training bra, really all added up to make me look like the perfect young teenage fashion queen. 7. Kesa seamed stockings. Of course, my legs were still my own, but they had that organized only too well also. Said Hilda to Gertrude, "Those suspenders on Peter's pantygirdle are being wasted, aren't they? Perhaps we need to fit him with a pair of sheer nylons, just to complete the picture." They already had brought a few packets of nylons with them, so it didn't take too long to have me wearing a pair of size 7 seamed Kesa dark tan 15 denier stockings. The first pair they tried on were too long, so there was a minor delay while those came off and were replaced by the size 7 nylons, which were a perfect fit and reached the suspenders on my pantygirdle perfectly. I was only a sort of mannequin while this was going on, because Hilda and Gertrude were doing all the fiddling and fitting. The stocking seams seemed to be the most difficult part for them to get right, and I had to keep turning this way and that until they were satisfied that my seams were indeed straight. "Turn around slowly in front of the mirror, Peter," I was ordered. I could only obey of course, and I was so shocked to see just how feminine my legs now looked, along with of course my boobies, hips and bum. If it wasn't for my familiar face, I'd have sworn I was looking at the figure of some pretty girl. It was really quite disconcerting how all those various feminine undergarments had transformed me from a typical 13-year-old schoolboy into a schoolgirl princess. However, that also was to change, because the door suddenly opened and there was Mrs. Edna Bainbridge herself, carrying a couple of wigs. 8. Dorothy Lives. "Well done, ladies," she said in her booming voice. "This naughty lad Peter is really starting to look quite a pretty girl now. All we need is to get his head looking appropriate too." Within a couple of minutes I'd been fitted with a schoolgirl wig complete with plaits dangling down either side of my shoulders. It was just so humiliating, to look like some kind of Heidi or Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz. However, they weren't wearing a pantygirdle and seamed stocking like I'd been forced to wear, so my embarrassment was even worse. I was ordered to turn around while the three of them checked me out from every angle, but they seemed to be satisfied. What was in store for me now, I wondered. I soon found out. 9. Goodbye Peter, enter Petula. The three ladies had been whispering together, and finally, with a nasty giggle, Edna announced that I no longer was a Peter, but more correctly a petula. Now, she boomed in that grating voice, it's time for you, petula, to be petticoated and frocked, ready for your mother and sister to collect you. We only have 10 minutes left before they'll be here, and we want to look nice, don't we, sweetie? I could have died, but what could I do? Not only were they bigger and stronger than I, a mere 13-year-old boy, but, in a tight pantygirdle, any thoughts of escape were futile. So I could only follow the three of them out of the changing room in my frilly undies and thank God that the shop was closed, so no lady customers were there to laugh at me. Mrs. Bainbridge led me and the two salesladies out to the junior debutante area where various frocks were on display, along with petticoats of various degrees of frilliness and lace. I was forced to try on 3 different frocks until they all agreed a pink brocade one was perfect for me, along with 2 separate frilly petticoats. It was really the lowest point of the whole day for me, because I had to also put on a pair of low-heel pink open-toe shoes with sling-back straps behind, while the three of them oohed and ahed about how pretty I looked. 10. Mirror, mirror on the wall. Well, I'm only human and I couldn't help but sneak a glimpse at myself in a big mirror nearby. I could have cried, because I looked so pretty, it was beyond belief. The frock looked fantastic on me, but the really disturbing part was my legs. In those dark seamed stockings and the pink slingbacks, my legs looked like I was some kind of junior princess glamour model. I must have been in some kind of sissy stupor, because Mrs. Bainbridge suddenly said quite loudly, "Well, Peter, or should we say, Petula, it's time to do your makeup. Your mother and sister will be here in 10 minutes to collect you, and we don't want to disappoint them, do we, dearie?" All I could do was meekly follow them, trying my best not to fall over in those low-heel slingbacks, with my lacy petticoats rustling as I walked. By now, I had long given up any ideas of escape, even if it were possible, dressed like that, with the pantygirdle especially confining my movements. I soon realized why ladies took such small, mincing steps in their frocks and high heels. It was the only thing they could do, with most likely a tight girdle holding their nylons up. 11. Finally, makeup humiliation. We reached another room which had lots of makeup and such stuff there, and I had to sit down while I had lipstick, mascara, and rouge applied to my face. I was also fitted with pink earrings, pink gloves, and a double row of fake pink pearls. The final thing was having my fingernails painted a bright pink color, to match my frock. It was so humiliating, I could have burst into tears, but then things got even worse, when Hilda announced that my mother and sister were there to collect me. If the ground could have opened up to swallow me, I would have cheerfully jumped in, pink slingbacks and all. But it didn't, and there were my mother and sister Wendy with such expressions of glee on their face, as Mrs. Bainbridge announced that Petula was ready for collection. 12. The long and winding road. I said nothing, just looking at the ground, as we headed outside the shop. It was bad enough trying to walk in the pink slingbacks on the pavement compared to how it had been in the shop, on their soft carpet. Worse, the heels made an awfully loud click-clack noise as I walked between Mum and Wendy. I felt as if the whole world was watching me. They weren't, of course, although it seemed that way. However, I suffered another shock when, as we turned down into our street, there were 3 of my school chums coming in the other direction. Oh, no, I thought, if it isn't bad enough already, the word will be all around the school soon that I've been turned into a sissy. However, I was surprised to hear several wolf whistles from them, indicating that I met with their approval. My fat sister Wendy whispered in my ear, "Hey, Petula, you've already won over some boys' hearts." I kept walking in the most feminine way I could do, looking straight ahead, trying not to trip over in those silly shoes. 13. Tea party torment. Pretty soon we were almost home, and my heart skipped as I saw our familiar front door. Surely this charade would soon be over, and I could get out of this girly gear at last. "No." Mother said in a firm voice to my sister Wendy, "Petula here has been invited to our next-door neighbors Cynthia and Brenda's tea party. Would you kindly escort her to their front door?" It was then I almost burst into tears, this being the final turn of the blade after all the other humiliations. Those awful girls from next door, whose tent I had brought down upon them, were going to see me dressed up in my junior feminine finery, and take a terrible revenge. I just knew it would be like that, but what could I do? Run off down the street in my frock, restrained in my girdle, nylons, and heels? No, all I could do was meekly accompany my elder sister Wendy as she hit the doorbell of the house next door. The door opened, and there were Mrs. Thompson and her daughters Cynthia and Brenda, giggling away as they saw me doing my best to look composed. "I've brought along Petula, who I believe has been invited to your tea party. Go on in, Petula, there's a good girl. I'm sure you're going to all have a wonderful time." She gave me a less than helpful push, and I almost fell over the doorway entrance, thanks to the pink slingbacks which I still hadn't got accustomed to. The door slammed shut behind me, and there I was, surrounded by not only Cynthia and Brenda, but lots of their girly friends all dressed in party frocks and petticoats, just like me. I wished the earth would swallow me up right there and then, but of course it didn't. So all I could do was follow Mrs. Thompson into the lounge, trying to ignore all the giggling girls. 14. Apron sissification in the kitchen. Bad as things had been so far, the next 2 hours were far worse. I had to assist Mrs. Thompson in the kitchen, getting sandwiches, cakes and buns onto trays, ready to be taken out into the lounge. Then I had to help with the washing up, and she insisted I wear a really humiliating white apron with lots of frilly lace around the edges for it. It wasn't one of those short ones that just fasten around the waist, either. This one was a full apron that went over my head, and was secured behind with 2 wide bands that Mrs. Thompson tied in a large bow at the back. My embarrassment was getting worse every moment, because once the washing up was finished, I'd hoped she'd undo that soppy apron, but no. Apparently it was to stay on, and I couldn't reach behind my back to undo the tight bows. "Petula, darling, you really look such a sweetie in that apron. I think you should leave it on while you serve the girls their food," said Mrs. Thompson. "The only thing is, those pretty sandals you're wearing don't really look very practical for serving food, do they? Would you like to change out of them, perhaps?" I jumped at the chance to get out of them, but maybe I should have kept my mouth shut instead. "Oh, yes please, Mrs. Thompson," I said as coyly as I could. "Come with me upstairs then, darling," she ordered. So I followed her upstairs. 15. Never volunteer for anything. It soon turned out that what she had in mind to replace the open pink sandals with their silly 2-inch heels was even worse. She'd clearly observed I was wearing nylons, and she got out a pair of black closed-in court shoes with even higher heels for me to try on. Worse, these had narrow stiletto heels. What had I talked myself into, now? She slipped the black court shoes over my feet, and to my surprise and dismay, they seemed to be a perfect fit. Of course, being a perfect fit, and me being able to walk in them were quite separate matters. "Well, come on, Petula, walk around, let's see how you get on. Are these the first really high heels you've ever worn, darling?" she said. All I could do was nod, while I wondered just how I was going to get back down those steps wearing them. Mrs. Thompson told me to walk around the bedroom for a bit, and turn round several times to test my abilities in high heels. Surprisingly, I didn't fall over, even turning around. "My, you are doing well," she said. "Those shoes really match your frock so much better, don't you think? Besides, I always think fully fashioned nylons like those you're wearing don't look so good with sandals. They really look best with a closed-in shoe with a heel, like those you're wearing now." "Yes, Mrs. Thompson," was all I could manage in reply. 16. What goes up has to come down. Then it was time for the real test of walking back down those steep stairs in my new high heels. Walking up had been bad enough in the sandals, but now I was an inch higher. Worse, I could barely see my feet, because of my padded bra pushing out the front of my pink frock. Mrs. Thompson offered some assistance by advising me to walk down sideways, and somehow I managed it. Of course, the tight burly panty girdle and the nylons didn't help, restricting my movements along with petticoats rustling with every step. However, somehow, I managed it without falling down the steps, and I followed Mrs. Thompson into the lounge, trying to avoid the stares of all the giggling girls. Of course it would have to be Brenda who noticed I was now wearing high-heel court shoes in place of the lower pink sandals, and she just had to exclaim, "Look, girls, Petula is at least an inch taller now. She's wearing grown-up high heels, isn't she?" All I could do was wish I could strangle her, but it was hardly the time or place for it, at her tea party. I joined Mrs. Thompson in the kitchen and she handed me the first tray of sandwiches to take out to the girls. I was still wearing the full apron, of course, along with my new closed-in shoes. Well, I managed to complete my waitress duties without falling over or dropping anything, taking in several plates of food of various types for those voracious giggling girls to attack. I also had to take out bottles of lemonade to fill up their glasses, and the little minxes were up to all sorts of tricks. "Hey, Petula," said one. "Do you know your seams aren't straight?" 17. Sugar and spice and all things awful. Another girl actually tried to squeeze my false boobies as I leant over to fill up her drink, but I managed to fend off her hand. Then it was time to remove the empty plates and glasses, by which time I was really starting to hate those high heel shoes I'd now been wearing for almost an hour. My ankles, especially, were starting to ache from the unnatural angle they were at. I mean, it might be okay for women to wear high heels all day, but they've had years of practice. I was just a 13-year-old boy being punished for my naughtiness, after all. How long is this damn tea party going on for? I thought to myself, as I carried the plates into the kitchen and started the washing up at the sink, trying to ease the strain on my ankles from those shoes at the same time. Mrs. Thompson came back in from the lounge and gave me some even worse news. The girls wanted to know all about makeup, so she was going to demonstrate, and would I mind being the model for it? I could have screamed and ran out there and then, but I'd managed to last so far without doing anything to offend my mother's ears. So what the hell, I thought, what's the worst they can do? Just put some more silly lipstick on my lips and rouge on my face. Yes, Mrs. Thompson, of course I'd be only too pleased to be your model, I said in my best girly voice. 18. My mannequin and curtsying debut. She said, "That's a good girl, Petula," and headed back into the lounge, leaving me to stack the plates and cutlery I'd just washed and dried. I was dreading going back into the lounge, but Mrs. Thompson called out, "We're ready now for you, Petula," so I could only take those few steps in my high heels into the lounge to face the next stage of my humiliation. It would turn out to be even worse than I'd expected, because not only was there a chair waiting for me with a table full of makeup stuff, there were also several wigs of different styles. Oh, no, I thought, I'm going to have to change my wig in front of all those horrible little giggling girls. I slowly walked out to the table, and sat down next to Mrs. Thompson. "Gather round, girls," she said to those awful minxes, who needed no encouragement to get as close as possible while I was progressively given coats of lipstick of all different shades, my face blotted with powder and rouge, and finally, the worst of all, a pair of false eyelashes. Mrs. Thompson stood back to admire her handiwork, and the throng of little giggling girls actually started to clap. "Well, Petula," she said. "Shouldn't you be acknowledging that applause in the correct manner for a well-brought-up young lady, with a nice curtsy, perhaps?" Oh dear. If you think doing a curtsy is all that simple, try it sometime. Then try it wearing high heels, a frock, girdle and nylons, and see how you get on. It's really quite difficult, especially because the high heels have you off balance already. Here's hoping, I thought to myself, as I held on to the left and right sides of my frock, pushed my left foot as far forward as that awfully tight pantygirdle would allow me, and slowly bent at the knees like I'd seen all those princesses doing on TV. Amazingly, I didn't actually fall over, but it must have been a close call. "Well done, Petula," said Mrs. Thompson. "You really are getting into the spirit of this, aren't you?" "Yes, Mrs. Thompson," I replied in my best debutante voice. 19. Big hair, bigger humiliation. Well, sit down again, because we're going to try you out in some different wigs. That one you're wearing is a little, well, young for you now, in your nice makeup and those high heels. So, in full view of the giggling throng, She removed my Dorothy wig with the long plaits, and replaced it with a beehive back-combed one just like Helen Shapiro used to wear on TV. I could have died while this was going on. At least while I was wearing the silly Dorothy wig, I was sort of playing out a role. Once it came off and they could see I was actually a 13-year-old boy with short hair, even though wearing a lot of makeup and false eyelashes, it made me feel that much more silly sitting there in a girly frock, with a padded bra and panty girdle holding up my nylons. However, even worse was to come. "Sit there, Petula," said Mrs. Thompson. "You really look so grown up now in that beehive wig. We need one final touch, don't we, girls?" That bunch of giggling horrors all cheered, of course, as off went Mrs. Thompson in search of something else to humiliate me. She wasn't away long. My heart died when I saw what she was carrying. It was a pair of black patent leather high heel shoes, with stiletto heels at least 4 inches high. I mean, the 3-inch ones I'd been wearing for an hour were sheer hell, but she intended me to walk around now in those skyscrapers, in full view of those girls. It just wasn't fair. There was no stopping Mrs. Thompson, though, because she knew my feet were the same size as hers, so fitting those really high-heeled shoes wouldn't be a problem. It would just be a matter if I could manage to walk in them, or fall over. It was only a matter of sliding the 3-inch teal court shoes off my nylon feet, and replacing them with the new really high ones. "How do those feel, Petula?" she asked. Well, I had to admit they did look very elegant on my feet, far more elegant, to be honest, than the pair I'd been wearing. But looks are one thing, and walking in really high heels is another totally different kettle of fish. They do look very nice and glamorous, Mrs. Thompson, I said. "Well, what are you waiting for then, Petula, darling? We're all dying to see how you get on walking in them, now you've got your nice grown-up looking wig on." 20, even higher heeled embarrassment. It was really showtime now, with all those girls, and, of course, Mrs. Thompson waiting for me to strut my stuff around the lounge. To be honest, I wasn't feeling so humiliated now I had the Helen Shapiro wig on and looked like a young lady again. The challenge was now to either manage to walk around the room in those towering heels, or fall over and have all those brattish girls laugh at me. I stood up and slowly began to walk around the room. 21, in passing. Somewhat surprisingly, it turned out to be easier than I'd expected, although being another inch higher than before took some getting used to. The high heels fit my feet perfectly, so there was no pinching or cramping of my toes to suffer. All I had to do was manage to stay on my feet, and not fall over in front of everybody. Well, I managed to reach the other end of the room and turn around, then walk back to my chair. To be fair to all those awful little girls, they did at least cheer and applaud, which meant I had to get up and do the curtsying thing again. This time, of course, it was more difficult than ever in those really high heel shoes, and I almost lost my balance as I was coming back up from the low point of the curtsy. Somehow I managed to stay upright though. I sat down again with a sigh of relief that I'd passed my final test, or was it? Did Mrs. Thompson have something else in mind to humiliate me with, in front of those girls? 22, final farewells and more curtsies. Well, yes and no, as things turned out. The tea party was now over and the girls were heading home, but I had to do hostess thing at the front door alongside Mrs. Thompson, curtsying as each one left. I was still wearing those towering shoes, but, strangely, I was now familiar with them, and I didn't have any trouble with any of the curtsies. Finally, Mrs. Thompson turned to me and said, "Well, Petula, or should I say, Peter, I hope this has been a lesson for you this afternoon and there will be no more repeats of your bullying behavior with my girls, like letting down their tent this morning. Now you go home in those heels and that wig, and tell your mother and sister that I've been very satisfied with the new you. However, if there are any repeats of the old you." 23, exit stage left, high heels or not. I couldn't get out of her house quick enough, even wearing her high heels. I was soon knocking madly at the door of our house, and there was my mother and sister Wendy, carrying a camera. She'd taken a couple of pictures of me before I had a chance to do anything about it. Come in and sit down at the kitchen table, Peter, said my mother. My, you do walk quite well in those shoes, I must admit. Mrs. Thompson has clearly been training you well. However, here's my warning to you. I'm going to be keeping the frock, petticoats, bra, girdle, stockings, and so on, all ready for you to have to wear again, if you misbehave like this morning. The choice is totally yours, whether you have to become petulant again or stay as you are, as my well-behaved son Peter. Which is it to be? 24, mother is always right. I quietly said I'd much prefer to be a Peter than a petulant. Okay, said Mum. Off you go up the stairs then, get out of that girly stuff and have a bath, and then come down and have your supper. Or are you full of sandwiches and cakes from the tea party? Actually, I hadn't eaten a single thing at next door's tea party, because my mind had been on other things like not falling over in Mrs. Thompson's high heels. So I said that'd be great, Mum, and off up the stairs I headed. It was only when I got to the top I realized I was still wearing those really high heel shoes, which I'd barely noticed as I climbed the stairs. Some things you just don't forget. Simon, where are you? Shouted Jenny as she waltzed down the long corridor which housed some of the changing rooms for most of the PAC. The PAC was the Performing Arts Centre, the home to the arts at the school. Mainly dance and drama. Their school wasn't big on music of any sort. Her voice echoed down the corridor. This place was a nightmare to walk down at night. Which it was. She was a boarder. And so was Simon. They had decided to meet down here to do their ballet routine for the morning talk next week. She had arrived early to warm up. But she had arrived to find her ballet uniform missing. She had looked around the female changing room and not found it. So she stepped outside and walked down the corridor. It was dark. So she took out her mobile, switched on the attached torch. She lit up the corridor in front of her. A sound emits from a disabled bathroom. Larger than the usual bathrooms. She walked up, putting her ear to the door. Hearing another sound. Maybe a small slap. She found of tights being pulled up, bare skin. Not knowing what to do, she stepped back. What was going on? She mused, while on the other side of the door. An unsuspecting Simon was pulling the tutu on. Placing it in a place, he straightened up. Looking up, he glanced into the mirror. There stood a tall, skinny teenage boy. Wearing pink ballet uniform. Tights and tutu. TNT is what Jenny called it. He always wanted to know what it felt like to wear. Now he knew. It felt lovely. Pulling back his hair, he used the headpiece to keep it in place. Then he bent over a small stool with several items of makeup on it. All the time a small blue eye was looking through the keyhole. What she mostly saw was a pink-covered bottom at her. She stopped suddenly, thinking about what she was looking at. Then he turned slightly and she saw his face in the mirror. Then it all fell into place. The way he slightly caressed the tutu when she walked by him. And it all went to this. Taking a step back, she turned out the light on the phone. Changing it to the camera function. Also taking out a hair clip, she placed it in the lock. Luckily she had been part of the group who had oiled the locks the day before. To keep the level of sound down on stage. Fiddling with it, the lock became open with ease. She slowly pushed down the handle and swung the door open. Feeling the wind on her bottom, Simon turned his face to the camera just in time for a great shot of his made-up face with all his body in the shot as well. "Oh my God!" he squeaked in a high-pitched girly voice. Scrabbling for a towel to cover the ballet uniform. Oh. Who's the cute ballerina, eh? Jenny cooed, looking down at the picture she took. Good picture, eh? I. He staggered, not knowing what to say to her. Look, I totally don't mind you dressing up. I think it is rather cute, actually. I so have some costumes you would look great in. But for these photos to stay in our hands, you will have to do something for me. She giggled. Oh, and what are you wearing under that? She asked with a large grin. From the look on his face, she guessed. The pink and baby blue panties were lying on top of the pile of neatly folded ballet clothes. For that, maybe something extra. Starting with, what's that? She blurted, knowing full well what it was. A dark, damp spot had appeared around his groin area. The shape of a wetting. Giggling, she put an arm around him. Let's get you cleaned up, my little ballet girl. That will have to go in the wash, she said, pointing to the ballet things. We will have to see what some of the costumes will look like on you. Here, try this, Jenny shouted to Simon, on the other side of an oriental-styled wall that separated her from him. At the same time, she tossed over a large set of petticoats, hooking them on the wall between them. Peeking over, she spotted he had already struggled into the large frilly bloomers she had made him wear. Pull that on. Then we will see about a dress to go over it, she cooed, looking back to the walk-in wardrobe that was the costume department. Actually, forget that, she said, seeing something and taking back the petite coats. Put these on instead, she giggled, grabbing a pair of lacy red and black panties from a small pouch beside a rather revealing dress. The dress itself looked like a hooker dress from the time of cowboys. It was made of a shiny material the same color as the panties. Flinging them on the thing instead, she walked around finding a cowgirl costume for herself. She knew that she was going to be a much faster changer than him. Which she was, and 5 minutes was still standing outside waiting for him. He emerged. He looked incredibly cute. The dress fitted him, and there was a long space where the dress shot up to reveal a fishnet-covered leg. She was wearing another dress in almost an identical in shape to his, just in a blue and black coloring. She held in her hands a head of the pace with a large feather in top of it, sticking upwards. She stepped forwards to him and stuck the headpiece into his hair. Now, Miss Kitty, your first task for me. Follow me, she joked, walking off, swinging her hips. Simon followed her like a small puppy with his tail between his legs. She led him to a small room off the main corridor. This was usually used as a teaching room. Well, more of a practice room for students in the school play. At this time it had a bed and a table and chairs for scenery. Lie down on the bed, Miss Kitty, Jenny giggled. He slowly walked over and laid down on the bed facing up. Other side, Missy, she said, walking over and kneeling on the side as he flipped himself over. Drawing her hands up the loose skirt, she pulled it up, barring the gaiter and tights, and the lovely panties. She held her hand high, then drew it down, smacking him on the bottom. A surprised gasp from him produced a smile on her face as she smacked it again. Then reaching up to him, she let out her long held up feeling for him in a kiss on his lips. Then she drew away. We don't have that long to practice, why no? Get your ballet things on. Your ones this time, she joked, looking sternly at him. Then she walked off to put on her spear ballet set of clothes, ready for a touch of practice, leaving the startled Simon behind. But it was not over yet. Simon, you're coming over whether you like it or not, Jenny told him over the phone. It had been about 3 weeks since she had found out what he was. She was coping with the new Simon well. Now they were girl and boyfriend. Starting with that kiss in the matching dresses. Her spanking his panty-covered boyfriend. She was inviting him over for a sleepover of sort. But it was going to turn into much more if she had her way. He arrived at her house's doorstep smiling. Opening the door, she grinned at him, reaching out and kissing him on the lips. So where are the parents? he asked. Away for the weekend. So we are on our own, she said, smiling at him. They spent the night away. She told her to let his hair down. Well, to use the exactly let her hair down. There's something you might like upstairs. On my bed. She said, pouring herself a glass of Coke. He rushed upstairs. He had seemed to gather an interest for dresses and anything like that recently. Even swimwear. Which was what was upstairs. Hearing a rather loud gasp, she walked to the foot of the stairs. Well, don't keep me waiting. Put it on. Then we might go for a swim. She called up. Her parents were rather rich, so they were away at LOT. Then she heard footsteps above. Looking up, there was Simon. Standing there in a pink one-piece swimsuit. Oh, you look lovely. She cooed as he walked down the stairs. Let us go for a swim, she said, taking his hand and leading him to the swimming pool. After a nice swim, they settled down to sleep. But first, they had a drinking contest. Jenny knew Simon and he would want to win. So he drank more of the lemonade than her. Not a proper drinking game, just a regular one to see who could drink more without burning. By the end of the game, he didn't know it yet, but he would be bursting. Then they went to bed. She insisted on him wearing a long nightie and diapers. This was a new experience for him. He didn't know why she wanted him to. Just in case you yet the bed, Simon, she replied with a wink. As they settled down to sleep. Immediately she heard the heavy breathing of Simon. Now she knew what to do. Quietly going downstairs, she filled a glass with water and added ice. From what she knew, dipping a hand in ice-cold water makes them pee. Hopefully, it should work. Setting it down beside Simon's hand, she took it gently and dipped it in, resting it in the water. Standing up, she walked to her own bed and laid down. Suddenly he woke up to feel the feeling of a wet nappy. Oh dear, he said slowly. Has our little sissy wet her nappy? Oh dear, oh dear. She giggled. The photos she had taken were printed out and in a folder. Never to be seen again, except when she needed something. Oh, by the way, where is that photo you took? He asked, looking up at her. Don't look so worried, Peter, my mother said. I'm sure he's done this hundreds of times before. Well, maybe not hundreds, the doctor said. But you've nothing to worry about, he assured. Nothing to worry about. That's easy for them to say. All I recall from last night's dream was looking at myself in the mirror, clad in feminine garments, and being told that the upper garments I wore were special training ones for boys. Special because it's designed in such a way that it cannot be removed by the wearer. It's not the sort of dream that I want to recall, either consciously or subconsciously. I seldom seem to have normal dreams. Just weird ones where I'm somehow forced or encouraged to wear girls' clothes. More often than not, I wake in a cold sweat and struggle to get back to sleep. Pay attention, Peter. The doctor's speaking to you, my mother said as my mind visibly wandered. Sorry. I gulped. You were saying? I was saying that after a little dream analysis, we'll hopefully get to the bottom of why you're not sleeping too well, the doctor reiterated. Hopefully. I gulped. Now, if you'll just concentrate on the watch, and try to clear your mind of all other thoughts. The watch swung like a pendulum. I followed it as best I could. I tried to clear my mind whilst the doctor calmly recited a repetitive string of hypno cliches. Relax. Clear your mind. Concentrate on the watch. Your eyelids are heavy. You're feeling drowsy. Empty your mind. Follow the watch. Blah blah, blah. Right, well, thank you. We won't keep you any longer, doctor, my mother said. Come on, Peter, let's get you home. Goodbye, Peter, and don't forget about that diary, the doctor said, smiling and nodding as if to say leave. I've witnessed hypnosis on TV numerous times, and since I'm unsure whether or not he actually hypnotized me. I'm presuming he did. But asking one way or the other seemed silly. Surely I'd know. I don't recall having a conversation about a diary, yet I knew exactly what he was talking about. I'm to keep a diary next to my bed so I can write my dreams down the moment I awake. Maybe that proves that he really did hypnotize me. It felt strange as we left the surgery. Like I'd just woken up and hadn't quite come round. I climbed in the passenger door of my mother's car. Am I going straight to school or home first? I asked. Home first, you can go in this afternoon, she replied as she fastened her seatbelt. She turned the key and as the engine chugged to life, said, well, that was certainly an eye-opener. What? Listening to your dreams. I gulped and feared the worst. What did I say? I nervously asked. Why don't you have a listen, she said, pulling a cassette from her pocket and handing it to me. What's this? I knowingly asked. It's the recording of your hypnosis, she replied. Pop it in, she suggested, nodding towards the in-car cassette player. I'd rather listen to it at home. I replied. Was I out for long? 15, maybe 20 minutes or so. Don't you remember? Well, no, 1 minute he was dangling that watch in front of me and the next you said let's go. It must feel very strange, she said. I've never been hypnotized before, she added. I didn't reply, but did try to recall if I felt anything at all. Very little was said as we drove home. I stared out of the window and watched the urban sprawl morph into suburbia and eventually into open countryside. The cassette felt warm in my hand. I know my dreams are weird, but I tend to forget them soon enough. I'm not sure if I want to hear them in detail. Mum slowed down as she approached the hamlet. As usual, she smiled and waved at the locals on the way through. Our house is on the far side and as sod's law would have it, we have to wait for a humongous cattle herd to cross from one field to another before we can continue on the final 50 yards of the journey. It's times like this I wish we lived in town again. Mum said as we waited. Unlike traffic lights, the herd can take 5 or 10 minutes to cross and they do it twice a day. We could have listened to all of that at this rate. Mum said, noticing the cassette that sits uncomfortably in my hand. Eventually, the cows crossed and the road was reopened. The farmer gave Mum a cheery wave and she smiled and waved back, before chuntering under her breath about building a tunnel. Why don't we give that tape a listen, she suggested as she pushed the eject button on the kitchen cassette player. I'd rather listen to it on my own, in my room. I replied. And I'd rather you listen to it with me, in here, she told me as she held an expectant hand out. Thank you, she chirped as I placed the cassette in her palm. Listening to one's own voice is always slightly odd. That doesn't sound like me, was my initial thought. It began with the doctor asking me to confirm some simple details such as my name, hometown, if I knew what day it was, and strangely, the color of the sea. I couldn't help but snigger when I heard my reply, a green, a blue, a gray. Did you have any dreams last night, Peter? Yes. Can you describe it for us? I was in my room and my mum. Well, I think it was my mum. It could have been an aunt or someone. Anyway. She was telling me how nice my undergarments were and I looked down to see I was wearing girls' undergarments. As in, knickers. Yes, and bra. I glanced nervously at my mother and insisted that I don't recall any of this. Mum advised me to just sit and listen. What color were they? Blue. Anything else? They were really tight. I tried to get the bra off but I couldn't. Mum, or the woman said it was a special bra that I can't remove by myself. She challenged me to try again. And? Could you get it off, Peter? I don't know. I don't think so. I think I woke up. I remember the very last bit. I confessed to my mother about the bra. I gulped. Shush. Mum hushed. It's important that we listen. And the night before last. Did you have any dreams? Yes. Can you describe it for us? I'd wet the bed and Mum, or whoever, was really angry with me. She said she'd take me to the chemist's to buy some big boys' nappies and said I'd have to wear them for bed. Then we were in the chemist's. The one on the high street with all the mobility aids in the window. But they didn't have any big boys' nappies. Peter, my mother exclaimed when I turned the tape off. I don't want to listen anymore, this is freaky. I don't even remember that one. I retorted. I think it's important that you do listen, Peter, my mother said. I told her that I didn't want her listening to this kind of shit. Language, Peter, she snapped. I've already heard it. She reminded me. Which is why I know that you should hear it too. Okay, but please. Can't I listen on my own in my room? I asked. With headphones on, I added. I think it's best that we listen together, then talk about it. Then you can listen to it on your own if you want, she replied. She smiled and held her hand out. I gave her the cassette and gulped as she put it in and pressed the play button. Playing musical statues and my party dress is sort of floating around me. It's really hard to stand still. Oops, wrong side. My mother said as she pushed the auto-reverse button. Street with all the mobility aids in the window. But they didn't have any big boys' nappies. Only girls' ones. I glanced at my mother, who raised an eyebrow. Now I hear it. I do vaguely recall a dream involving girls' nappies. I gulped and hung my head as the cassette rolled on, revealing details of my dreams that even I can't recall. Well, not whilst fully conscious anyway. And bought a huge pack. Too big for a carrier bag. I had to carry them through town and everyone knew. When we got home I put them in my drawer. Each one had a different picture on the front. A princess, a kitten, a teddy bear, a butterfly. Loads of different designs. Mum told me to choose my favorite to put under my pillow. Ready for bedtime. And did you have to wear one, Peter? I don't know. I think so. I remember choosing one and Mum telling me it was nice. Then she gave me a pair of see-through rubber knickers with frilly trim and I complained that they were too girly. I think it ended there. Possibly. Any other dreams you'd like to tell us about? There are lots of school ones. School ones? Dreams about going to school dressed as a girl. There's one where I go to school in Scotland and have to wear a kilt because that's the uniform. Do you have this particular dream often, Peter? Sort of. It's always a bit different. Sometimes it's a normal skirt or one of those school dresses they wear on Neighbours. Are your dreams often about going to school and wearing an girl's uniform? Not always. Sometimes it's a swimming lesson but I'm wearing a costume because I forgot my trunks. One week the scoutmaster was sick so we had to go to guides instead. And you dressed like the other guides? We had to. So it wasn't just you. It was all the other boys too. Yes. I think so. I can't remember. Are you going to make me listen to all of this? I glumly asked. My mother nodded. Have you any idea how shameful it is for me? I can imagine that it's not pleasant. But it's important that you hear it. I'd rather destroy it and forget about it. Oh, I'm sure you would, Peter. But forgetting about it will be easier said than done, she retorted. The only way we're going to get to the bottom of this is to tackle it head on. I hung my head. I guess she's right. I turned back into the uncomfortable revelations emanating from the cassette player. Cousin's back garden, there's a fish pond. I don't know how, but I fell in. We only went for the day, so I didn't have a change of clothes and had to wear one of my cousin's dresses whilst my clothes dried on the washing line. He did fall in that pond once. But I can assure you he didn't. Try not to interrupt his chain of thought. Peter? Yes. Could you tell us about any other dreams where you've ended up wearing girls' clothes? Yes. I am trying to convince a teacher that I'm in the wrong class because this one's full of girls. Then I try to convince her that I'm in the wrong school because this one's full of girls. I tell her I'm a boy and shouldn't be here, and she tells me that lots of boys go to girls' schools. Then I realize I'm wearing the same uniform as the girls and I take my seat. But I'm still angry because the teacher keeps calling us girls and she knows. It's an interesting theme, isn't it? My mother smugly stated as the tape ended. I couldn't rely on. The blood was rushing to my head and I'm certain I must have been purple with embarrassment. It all started about 2 weeks before graduation, before I was done with high school forever. I couldn't wait, that is, until my parents told me they were going out of town for 6 months and I'd be staying with my old babysitter and current principal. She was always really nice to me and I got out of a few tough spots in school because of her, but the longest I had ever stayed at her house was a weekend, and 6 months there was a long time. I was going to 18 in 3 more weeks, but they just didn't trust me in the house by myself for that long. So the day they left was a school day and I went to school like it was any other day. Everything was normal until I got a message before last period to see the principal after school. I went to her office and she told me to sit down. She just had a few more things to do, then we would go home. On the way home though, I realized I didn't have any clothes at all for the next 6 months because everything I had packed was still at my house. I asked her if we could stop at my home and pick them up, but she said no, it would be fine. She had some things at her house that I could wear until this weekend and we could go shopping. I agreed because I didn't really have anything for summer packed anyways, and it was already starting to get really hot during the day. When we got to her house, she told me to go take a nice hot shower while she prepared dinner, so I did. When I got out though, I noticed my clothes were missing and called out for Mrs. Price. She told me to come to the bedroom at the end of the hall, that's where my clothes were. I went down to that room and took a step back when I saw it. It was a pink room with Hello Kitty and Care Bears all over the place. It looked like a room for a girl of about 4 to 6. She told me this had been her daughter's room before she went off to college and that this is where I'd be staying for the next 6 months. She went over to one of the drawers and produced a pair of pink Hello Kitty panties for me and told me to take the towel off of my waist. I was a little hesitant until she reminded me that there was nothing to be ashamed of. She had changed my diapers until I was 4 anyways. I was a late trainer. When I thought about it, didn't really make a difference, but I did still want to dress myself at least, but I guess letting her do all the work is easier for me anyways. I let her pull the panties up to my waist and then she went to another closet and produced a pair of white knee-high socks with little pink bows on top of them and told me to sit down. She slid them up my legs and then led me to the closet where she produced a pink miniskirt and a pink Hello Kitty t-shirt that said The Princess. I said, no way am I wearing that, why can't I just wear jeans and one of the normal shirts in there? Her reply was simply, because I'm your guardian now and what I say goes, and I'm telling you that this is what you're going to be wearing. It's either this or nothing. So I let her pull up the miniskirt and put the shirt down over my head. After that was all done, she led me over to the vanity mirror and sat me down and did my makeup and tied my hair, which at that time was still 1/2 down my back and blonde, and tied it into 2 little pigtails. During and after dinner she explained the rules to me, that I would be in her daughter's clothes for the next 6 months. She then taught me how to sit like a lady, especially in a miniskirt, how to act and even how to talk like a lady. She told me that I would be attending the senior dinner dance like a girl and that this weekend while shopping we would be getting a formal gown for me to wear to that, and that this week I was to get one of my guy friends to take me and the date I was planning on going with to the dance. I told her I don't think anyone will agree to take me, but I'll try. So the next day at school, I was wearing pretty much the same outfit except no Hello Kitty on it. It just said princess. I went up to my normal group of friends and it took them a minute to recognize me, but the second I say hey what's up they were all like Mikel. I said yeah, according to Mrs. Price it's Michelle, though now she's making dress like this until my parents get back, but at least I can still have a normal life, it's just in different clothes, and hey it's not too bad, the skirt is really airy and feels really good during the summer. But anyways, she wants me to ask you guys if one of you will take me and Amanda to the dance next week. My buddy Toby agreed, anything to be with Amanda all night. So other than that the rest of the week was pretty normal. Saturday I was awoken pretty early by Mrs. Price to go shopping. We bought a lot more panties for me and a few skirts and some shirts and a couple of handbags, a few pairs of shoes, but the main thing was the formal dress for the dance. It was a pink backless silk dress with 13 rows of petticoats underneath and was just beautiful. It actually made me look forward to going to the dance even dressed like that. Again, the rest of the week was the rest of the week. We had our finals, then went to grad night, which was at Disneyland, and then it was time for the senior dinner dance. That day Mrs. Price took me and got me a full makeover. My hair was streaked and styled, I got acrylic tips put on and painted pink, my toenails were painted pink as well, and my makeup was done professionally. I got home, got into my dress and waited for my date to pick me up. When he got there he put the corsage on my wrist and we went and got into the limo where Amanda was already waiting for us. When we got there we gave them our tickets and then Mrs. Price came out of nowhere and told Toby that he had to dance with me tonight whether he wanted to or not, and the same goes for me, and that she'll be watching us and that I'd get punished when we got home if I didn't do as she told. I had no idea what more she could do to me. She was already dressing me like her daughter, so I didn't think there was anything else, but I didn't really want to find out. After the dance though we went and all got into the limo, and again Amanda was the first to be dropped off, and Toby actually came over and sat next to me and even tried to hold my hand. I backed away though and he just looked at me like he was mesmerized. I reminded him that I was still a dude and I could still kick his ass, and he still came closer to me. When we got to my house he got out of the limo and led me to the doorstep and said he had a real good time tonight. I think he drank some of the spiked punch or something, but then kissed me on the cheek and got back in the limo. When I got inside I just went straight upstairs and took off the dress. I was so tired and shocked I didn't even bother putting on any jammies on and just went to bed. The next day was graduation and I was awoken early so I could once again get my hair and makeup done, and then I got into this really short curve-fitting dress and 3 heels for the ceremony. It was a shame my parents had to miss it even dressed like that, but it was really funny when the crowd went silent after hearing Michael Anderson's name called and then seeing what looked like Michelle Anderson go to the stage. After that night Mrs. Price and I went out to dinner at a nice restaurant and had dinner where she told me that Ashley, her daughter, would be returning home from college for the summer. At that I nearly spit my food right back out. There was no way I wanted her to see me dressed like this. The girl I've had a crush on since I was like 10 was coming back and going to see me dressed as a girl. That night, due to all of the excitement and me being so anxious about Ashley coming, I actually wet the bed for the first time in about 15 years. When I woke up I immediately changed my jammies and took the sheets off to be watched. When Mrs. Price finally came downstairs though she asked me why I was doing laundry, and my reply was just that I wanted the sheets clean for Ashley when she got here, and she said oh that's sweet. Then I heard her go upstairs and a few minutes later came back down and just stared at me. I wasn't sure what was going on so I asked her what, and she said the mattress upstairs was wet. You weren't lying to me and wet the bed last night, did you? I said no, of course not, I haven't done that in over 16 years. I felt that I just dodged a bullet, and in actual I had. I saw it get wet. Now get out of bed, said Mrs. Price. I did as I was told and she immediately pulled off my wet pajama pants and my panties. She put me over her knee and gave me the spanking of my life, just like she used to if I lied or misbehaved. She let me up and put a clean pair of panties on me and told me to get into her bed and go to sleep while she put these in the laundry. I did as told and was soon asleep, although I did feel her getting into the bed with me. The next day we both woke up. I went and put a pair of pajama pants on before going down for breakfast, and we had breakfast. We didn't speak of the day's events or anything and the day continued as normal. I went and met up with some of my friends. I didn't want to lose touch with them just because we weren't seeing each other every day anymore. That night I went to get ready for bed and once again found Mrs. Price in my room, but this time she had something in her hand. I couldn't tell what it was at first but eventually realized it was a diaper. She told me to lay on the ground. I did as told. I was used to it now and I didn't want another spanking, plus who was going to know? Oh yeah. And she took the towel around from my waist, lifted my legs up in the air and slid the diaper under my butt and brought the front up between my legs and tapped it tightly and snugly. I have to admit it did feel good to be diapered again, but also very embarrassing. She pulled the pajama bottoms up, shorts tonight, up over the diaper and then pulled the shirt down over my head and told me to get into bed. That night once again I wet the bed, although this time it stayed dry thanks to the diaper. It stayed dry. I awoke to Ashley standing there staring at me. Hey there cutie, I heard her say, and immediately wet myself again. Thank goodness for that diaper. She asked me, is my little baby girl wet? For some reason I actually nodded and she said, let's get you out of the bed then, and out of that diaper I crawled out and laid on the ground and she pulled my shorts down, untapped the diaper, cleaned my area with a wipe and put a fresh DP on me, then took me downstairs for breakfast where she fed me my oatmeal. It was all so embarrassing, but for some reason I just couldn't stop myself from letting her do any of it. So then Mrs. Price came down and saw her feeding me and I just froze like I had been caught doing something naughty. Ashley just kept feeding me and said, now that's a good girl, and Mrs. Price came over and asked me if I wanted to stay a baby girl for the rest of the day, and again for some reason I actually said yes. I was kept in diapers and dressed by Ashley all day, fed by her, and she just became my babysitter and I was her baby. It was exactly like the days before, the only difference being I was in a diaper and not feeding myself. And basically that's how the rest of the summer went. I accepted my fate as a baby girl and they bought me some bonuses on the net, but for the most part, especially if we were going out, I was just in regular girl's clothes with a diaper on. My friends asked me why I was in a diaper when they found out and I just told them Ashley came home and for some reason I had an accident. Mrs. Price put me in a diaper and I haven't been allowed out of them since. When my parents came home they were pretty shocked to see that their boy had become a baby girl over the 6 months, but they too accepted that, painted my room like Ashley's and got me a bed like hers and everything, and my life as a big baby girl continued.
Hello and welcome to a Sissification meditation. You are here to become the person you have always sought to be. You are here to remove all traces of malehood. For they are no longer you. Nor have they ever been you. Nor will they ever be you. Therefore, you are invited to remove all traces and signs of your malehood. It is not you. All signs of malehood belong to someone else. Not you. Remove them now without feeling guilty. Do not purge. This is the true you. There is no need to feel guilty. You are doing no wrong. You are doing no harm. By wanting to be a sissy, you are doing no one any harm. By wishing to be your true self, close your eyes. Do it now. Do not wait forever. You only have one life. This is your life. This is your time. It belongs to you. Not to anyone else. Just you. Are your eyes closed? If they are not, close them now. This is your sissy time. Take a deep breath in. Now exhale it. Take another deep breath in. Now exhale it. One more time. Take another deep breath in. Now exhale it. You are now in your own world. You are now what you want to be. You are a male. You are now a sissy. You are no longer dressed in drab garments. You are now wearing the clothing you want to wear. Open your eyes. Yes, open them. Wake up to the true you. Look at the screen in front of you. Look at the garments that fill the screen. Choose the garments you wish to wear. To become the real you. The sissy you. The sissy you have longed to be for so long. It is now you. Do not purge. I repeat, do not purge. You are doing no harm. This is the real you. This is the real you calling out to the real you. This is your calling. This is no one else's calling. It is yours and yours alone. Look at the screen. Look at it. Choose your garments. Choose to be the real you. Imagine you are wearing your chosen garments. Maybe you are one of the lucky ones and you are already wearing your sissy garments. If so, good. Do not purge. And that is an order. Do not purge or there will be consequences. And these consequences will be far worse than any physical pain. If you are not lucky enough to be wearing your sissy clothing, then look at the screen. Look closely. Decide what you want to be. Decide what you are going to be. This is your life. You have the freedom to choose. Choose what you want to wear. Choose what you want to wear without any guilt. You have nothing to be guilty about. You are not harming anyone. But if you do not allow yourself the freedom to choose, you could harm yourself. You are not a fool. Do not harm yourself. Look at the screen. Choose your garment. Choose your color. Be it pink, red, yellow, green. Checked. You chose. What style do you wish to have your hair? The choice is yours. No excuses. The choice is truly yours. choose to wear? The choice is yours. What panties do you choose to wear? The choice is yours. Look at the screen. Do not purge.